So I saw this video. I thought it'd be pretty interesting. It said why gaming doesn't feel the same anymore. I think we should dive into it. Um, for definitely gaming for me, it seems the same, but that's because my time window for watching when gaming went trash is very small. It's about like a 4-year window. But I think we should see what this guy has to say.
A common reoccurring thing you'll hear from old people is the constant comparisons of what we have now to what they had in their day. The new generation is somehow worse, the cars aren't built as well, the food isn't made as well, and the movies just suck now. But to a modern generation, it's always quite the opposite. You look at the shit that existed before you were born, and it's always just shocking people even enjoyed being alive back then. This phenomenon
Being alive in the 1800s would have sucked. Hot take, okay? That would have sucked. I mean, you die at like 50. I don't think the economy was very good back then, although it's kind of trash now. Really, what did you have that was fun? There was no mountain biking. There was at least skiing, not to the extent of what we had today. The gyms weren't as good as today. I think life is pretty good compared to the 1800s.
is quite the debate within the gaming community. Are games just not made with the same heart they used to, or maybe I'm just too old to enjoy them now? I personally think there's a lot of merit to both of these statements, and to be honest, I'm sure if you clicked on this video, you do too. I think it's time we all take an objective look at gaming without the lens of nostalgia to figure out why gaming just doesn't feel the same anymore. Now, I think to start dissecting this question, it's more important to define the overarching history of gaming in general. Now, I've made this pretty little timeline for all.
Okay. So let's see. We have 1983 is the NES. Nintendo? I think it's Nintendo. Let me know if I'm wrong. And then somehow we started at Gen 3, and then we skipped a generation to Gen 5. Okay. And then we have PlayStation 1 and also N64. And then Nintendo left right here. And I started playing on the PS3 right here. Not in 2005, but I still remember playing on a PlayStation 3 when I was growing up. And then we got a Wii, and the Wii was better. Because it's more family friendly, you know?
All of us to look at here, and I'd separate gaming into two distinct eras, the pre-online era and then the modern online era. Sorry to be over-explanative, but this marks the point where online multiplayer rose to prominence and really became the main genre of gaming, and while there technically was some online capabilities with the PS2, it really rose to prominence with the 7th generation of consoles.
I love online gaming, man. Like, WoW. It sucks that we're like having a shift towards single player games. Online gaming, in my opinion, is way better than single player gaming.
Or the PS3 and Xbox 360. Now, within each of these eras, I'd label out some notable points on the timeline. The 3rd generation consoles really marked the mainline home console era, then the PS1 and N64 took it to the next level, then of course the launch of the PS2 and GameCube, and then into the modern era. 2005 marked the release of the PS3 and 360, then around 2012 we got the PS4 and Xbox One, and then as of the time—
Yeah, that makes sense. I know people that still use the PS4, so that makes total sense.
Time this video is being made, the most recent consoles are the PS5 and Series X. The reason I feel it important to really label this out is mainly just to give you some visual representation, but also really the shift in gaming as a whole. Now, it's not all of them, but I've put most of the best-selling games—
Is it just me, or should the colors be reversed? I feel like blue should be modern era, and red should be old era. Also, I don't see WoW on here.
of each year on here, and I'm sure you can see the gradual changes.
It's just because it's a console video, I'd assume. But I don't see WoW on here at all.
Just from
And that's really weird, because I think WoW was the most influential game of the early 2000s.
a glance. There is a huge distinction of when Call of Duty rose to prominence and dominates the best-selling lists every year. But another reason I'm giving you this timeline is because I feel it's important to sort of mark where we all land on it specifically, and something I feel very lucky about is that within this timeline I am in an incredibly unique position. I was born quite literally smack dab right in the middle of this timeline, and naturally by the time that I was, say, coherent enough to play a video game, it would make sense that chronologically I would be playing a PS4 or Xbox One, but thankfully for me, I grew up poor as fuck. All I had to play until I was maybe 12 or 13 were just retro games all the way up from the NES to the PS2, and
No, I was the same way, though. I guess you can't say I was poor, but we had a PS3 in the house until I'd say until like 2015, we had a PS3 in the house. And then we got a Wii, and that's when we kind of stopped getting gaming consoles. Yeah.
and everything in between. And as a result, I've gotten to play almost every single home console ever. Now, I'm going to take a pretty good guess that most of you watching this started at one of 3 different points. Number 1, your childhood had a PS2 or N64, making
Definitely
you
not.
probably around 30 or so. There are those of you who grew up with a PS2, which would make you probably anywhere from 24 to 30. Then there's my generation who had a PS3 and 360, which makes you anywhere from 16
And I'm not 17. Just to clear this up, okay? I'm not 17. All right. The thing is with this is that we just had really old stuff, old technology, because we couldn't care less about upgrading our technology. And so 10 years later, we were still using the PlayStation 3. That's kind of how it worked.
to 25, but even though all of these console eras are so different, the common thread is that gaming for most people just doesn't feel the same anymore, so I decided to ask my friends why. The question I specifically decided to ask was, does gaming feel the same to you, and if not, when did it change and why? And before I dive into their answers and our
Let's see. Gaming does not feel the same. If it changed, then why? So I can't answer this question because I have a 4 to 5 year, really a 4 to 5 year frame of reference. I didn't really start playing games until I started playing WoW. Now, I guess my parents did show me WoW back in all the way, like back in 2016, but I didn't really start playing it until COVID, around 2019 to 2020. So I started out with games being trash, and games are still trash. So I can't say anything, right? I guess I played Fortnite in there, but I really only played WoW. For me, gaming doesn't feel the same because I'm arguably slightly older and arguably also slightly more mature. And so I have more things to do and more responsibilities. And so, unlike in the COVID times, I can't spend 8 hours a day playing WoW. It's just not possible. So I can only really, I can maybe find some time on the weekends, but that's only like 2 hours. Even last year, it would be like 2 hours daily, 3 hours daily, which isn't a lot, but it's a good amount, right? So it changes really quickly.
same to you, and if not, when did it change and why? And before I dive into their answers and our conversations as a whole, I think it's more importantly to ask you that. After this video goes out, I want you guys to comment down below how old you are, what console you grew up with, and when you think gaming changed the most. Now, to get this started with my first friend who comes from an older generation who I thought would offer some pretty unique insight. Yeah, so why do you think gaming has changed and when do you think it happened?
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit. I'm horny as fuck,
Yeah?
man. I'm a freak, man. Like,
Did you just say true? Wait, did you say true?
And when do you think it happened?
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit.
You said true. Wow. I'm gonna just check this one more time. Ah, whoops, my bad, guys.
Gaming has changed and when do you think it happened?
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit.
And why does he have like a suicidal frog right here? Okay, I'm gonna stop asking questions and get on with the
I'm
video.
horny as fuck,
Yeah?
man. I'm a freak, man. Like, for real.
Now, I really didn't get anything out of that conversation, and I contacted the authorities, so do with that what you will. Now, after that, I decided to go to people who were just a touch older than me, and I contacted my friend Chase. He's an incredibly good friend of mine who grew up with the PS2 era of games and is one of the nastiest Gears of War players I have ever
Okay.
seen in my entire life.
I think gaming's always been changing, like from the beginning. And I'm old enough now that I got to see some of like the more notable ones. Like it seems like now like a lot of the changes that happen are more incremental. It was probably slowly over time.
It's slowed over time because the technology progressing has slowed over time. Because there's only so good that we can make something. So, right now we're kind of in an in-between phase where games can't really go anywhere until there's a huge innovation. So that's why it's slowing over time.
That change happened, where I felt less and less like I loved playing video games, you know. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it had to do with it was like an escape from like growing up. I'm like, man, I hate school, right? Like, I want to go home and like get to play games
Real.
with my friends. And at that time in my life, like that was definitely like a nice, you know, growing up, it was just a nice like a break from everything else.
Now, Chase made a lot of really good points that I never really stopped to consider, but
And I just want to point out, this looks like absolute trash, and I would not want to play this game. I don't even know the name of this game. I'm that young. But this right here, this texture on the ground, this looks boring as hell.
it's fair to say his decision is relatively split. Now, let's talk about my generation that grew up with the PS3 and 360s in their homes, and let me answer
Okay.
this question firsthand. Gaming, for me, stopped feeling the same in the last 2 or 3 years. Once I started having a lot of responsibility and came to terms with the fact that I really wasn't capable of being a pro at any game I played, it just really lost the appeal.
I think trying to be a pro at a game is stupid, and that's why WoW Mythic Rating, nobody does it. It's because when you try and spend your life playing a game and try and be pro at a game, it becomes your life, and generally you end up quitting. I tried being good at Fortnite for a while, even though I really was not good at Fortnite for a little while, and guess what? I quit. It's because trying to be pro at something never works. I tried to be really good at WoW. Right? It was only for a couple months during the summer. I just wanted to see how far I could get up. And I got into heroic rating, and it was just had no point. I was installing all my weak auras and all my deadly boss mods, and it just became too much. And I still haven't even completely finished the normal level raid, right, of the War Within. Now, I don't even know what it's called. It's like it's not even City of Threads. But I still haven't finished it because taking a game seriously, there is no point to taking a game seriously. It's a fictional game.
Gaming for the sake of getting better really has just sort of lost a good percentage of its value, and now to me it's just kind of a hobby. But games that feel nostalgic to me really seem to cap off a little into the PS3 generation, but that's just my research. Let's look into a bit more credible source. Reddit. Now, usually I do hate going into the purgatory.
Yeah, I think Reddit is probably one of the best sources. They have probably some of the most accurate information of anywhere, really.
That really is Reddit, but I did
Okay.
find one thread on here that I think provides a lot of very valuable input. Now, our poster here used to play a lot of video games, but has really struggled recently to find them as appealing. I used to play a ton of video games before, and they slapped. I used to play them all day and have so much fun, but now for a few months, I've noticed that gaming just isn't as fun anymore. Maybe it's because I have a low-end PC and don't have many options, but I still feel like it
It's definitely not because of that. And I say even if you have a low-end PC, you still have tons of options. Because no developer is really making their games for anyone that has a high-end PC or needs a high-end PC. Having a high-end PC is useless. There is no point to having a high-end PC, having a high-end camera, having a high-end microphone. There's just no point to having high-end anything. Because developers design for middle-of-the-road people. And everyone wants to watch and wants to talk to people that are the same as them. So there's no reason to try and go above and beyond with your computer to get more fun out of your games.
would be even if I had a higher end one. Does anyone know why this is happening? More importantly though, the responses are a really good place to start unraveling this mystery. Sure, you haven't lost sight of why you play video games? I feel like in the age of live service yada yada that gaming has become, it's far too easy to lose sight of why. You didn't play Skyrim because you wanted to get
Well, yeah, because basically I'd say it's min-maxing. They try and see how quickly they can complete a game instead of trying to enjoy the game. And so when they don't enjoy the game, they quit. It's pretty straightforward if you think about it.
at 100% or to be max level, you played it for fun. You're old as fuck and your cell phone programmed you for instant gratification. Your interests are changing. Try a new hobby. All of these responses are worded in different ways, but they actually boil down to a core reason that I want to dive into. Reason 1, you're playing games for a different reason. Reason 2, the world around you has changed. Reason 3,
I say that one's a huge one. Look at the internet, for example. Games back in the early 2000s, the internet wasn't there. They were made easier because you couldn't look things up on the internet. You should not have to look anything up on the internet in order to play a game. Whenever I have to look something up on the internet in order to complete a quest in WoW, the quest was not designed right.
3, the games themselves have changed. Reason 4, you've changed. Reason 5, mental illness.
Mental illness, that's just a random one. But reason 4 is a valid one, right? You have more responsibilities to do. You have, well, really, you want to take care of yourself because you don't want to die at the age of 50, right? Because your metabolism slowed down. What are the other ones? You have a family. you have food or dinner to put on the table at night. You have all these responsibilities, and you can't fit in gaming all the time. It's just, it doesn't work. And so people just don't play games because it's stressful. They feel forced to log on, so they don't log on.
Let's dive into each of these individually and hopefully somewhere along the way find a logical answer. Reason 1. You're gaming for the wrong reasons. If you feel that games aren't the same for you anymore, I want to ask you why you played games as a kid. Did you even think about why you were doing it back then, or was it just something you did to have fun? Nowadays, when you play games or start up old ones, be honest with me, is it for the same reason, or is it for a far more driven, specific goal or endgame? I can tell you as a kid, I had absolutely no desire to max out an account or grind anything. I just wanted to dick around and have fun. For me, it was both an escape from reality, but more importantly, a way to just pass time. Nowadays, when you play games, is it to have fun, or is it to get better and more importantly beat others, which sure can be fun, but also equally frustrating. When playing a game where victory is the sole objective, you can sometimes lose sight of why you're playing to begin with. The games just aren't.
I think PvP games have ruined gaming because all these people with short attention spans thrive in that scenario. So they all go play their PvP games, and really all the adults, all these old people just can't keep up. I mean, I can't keep up, and I'm not even old. It's just I can't keep up with those 8-year-olds that are grinding away at Fortnite or grinding away at Apex Legends or, Call of Duty or whatever game out there, right? And so that's why I don't like PvP games, because, I mean, it's really just, you don't get anywhere when you're doing PvP games. PvP games have ruined gaming.
Aren't relaxing at that point anymore. Everything's stressful, and as an adult, additional layers of stress that just seem unnecessary
Yeah, and there's that too. PvP games are just really stressful.
Are inevitably going to dissuade you from picking up that controller. This is where a bunch of recent statistics might be a bit eye-opening for you. Currently in the US, over 60% of the population are considered gamers. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that mobile gamers do make up a large percentage of that. The average age of a gamer is now 35 years of age, meaning that
There's no way. There's no way. Assuming he's talking about the US. So, when they say over 35, it's because it's a larger age group. So, I guess you could say that, but like, it's really close. It is really close, because like, if you look at this, yeah, and I get this is counted as 35 to 34, and so that's, but then adds up to be more. Well, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Yeah, that's still crazy though. I think it would definitely be below 18. Or 18 or and under. Not 35. Because like people that are 35 like have jobs and stuff.
that half of the gamers in the States are above 35, which is pretty crazy information to process, to be honest. The gaming industry is currently evaluated to be worth $350 billion, expected to breach the $500 billion mark in the next few years.
Okay.
Newzoo has laid out this fantastic little chart segmenting all of the gamers into 9 distinct categories. Now, using these categories, it would indicate that of the 212 million US players, 91 million of them exclusively play mobile games or don't play major.
Mobile games suck, and the only reason why is because of the female population. Because I think once you play on a PC, once you play on a, I mean, even an Xbox, really, or a PlayStation, you can't go back to mobile gaming. It's just, there's something about touch controls to me that just do not feel intuitive.
Major consoles. Only about 57% of gamers actually like to personally play games on consoles or PCs. Now here's where the age comes back in. Out of all of the gamers in the US,
I find that to be really strange, but I also don't find it to be surprising. And I think that's probably what's contributed to PC games getting kind of bad, because they're seeing how successful mobile games are. And all mobile games are free, and so PC games are trying to attract people from the mobile gaming audience, which are all free-to-play players. And so then they introduce a ton of pay to win into their game, and then nobody wants to play their game.
Legit, only 23% of gamers are below 18. Now, why is this important? Well, the only people outside of pros with enough time to get seriously good and stay good at 90% of competitive games are below 18. The other 77% of gamers probably have jobs and families. So let's take our total 57% of gamers who enjoy playing console games and then take 23% of that, and we're left with a grand total of 11% of gamers. These are the people who like the games but also have the time to get good at them. Once you hit a certain age, playing games to be a competitive player just might not be worth it.
Exactly. This is exactly my point, and this is exactly why mythic grading should not exist in WoW. It's because it's pointless.
Furthermore, you might start finding that games are only fun for those at the top specifically. A recent study made by a researcher at the University of Oxford ran an experiment to determine what the connection was between frustration and gaming, if there was any to begin with. They first took in a collection of college students and had them initially dip their hands in a bowl of ice water for a set amount of time. Now, what they told the college students was that the previous contestant had set the amount of time they had to hold their hand in. After this, they played a game with varying levels of violence, and then finally a game of Tetris. Half of the students got a very easy version of Tetris, and the other half got a far more difficult version. Then, at the end of this, the students were asked to set the time for the next student to hold their hands in the ice for, and the results are fucking fascinating. There was absolutely no difference in students who had been exposed to different levels of violence, but the students who had played the far more frustrating version of Tetris on average made the next student hold their hand in water for an additional 10 seconds.
That's exactly why more grindy games make you play for longer. And so when we make easy games now, nobody wants to play them. And that's why when you have WoW, which I know I am glazing WoW a lot, but when you have WoW that literally takes 150 hours to finish, classic WoW, people get addicted to it, and then they try and do more characters and do it all over again. That's why it was so successful. It's because it was hard, or not hard, but it took a long time to complete.
The reason I'm bringing this up is that if video games are taken far too seriously as more than just a way of having fun, then let's be real here, you're gonna get frustrated, increasingly aggressive, and potentially sadistic. So potentially start reconsidering your approach to the medium as a whole. But admittedly, the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is exactly what I've fallen into many times. I am an incredibly competitive person in literally anything I get into, and as a result, games that I used to have a bunch of fun with have become very frustrating, serious endeavors. So
I think everyone is. That's why you don't play PvP games, because then you don't get angry.
I'm a bit conflicted here, so I once again decided to ask my friends how competitiveness has affected gaming. Do you think the shift towards competitive multiplayer games also had an impact on what we consider to be like nostalgic games, or kind of the soul of games as a whole?
Yes. Yes, it did. I don't care what this guy says, but I know that it did have an effect. Alright, I'm gonna change this for a sec, my volume, because I think my mic volume's a little bit quiet. I'm gonna be honest. I hope that's better.
Yeah, I think sometimes some of the most unbalanced games were like the most fun, whereas like you don't see that as often anymore. Like Modern Warfare 2 was so horribly balanced. Like
Did he say? So I don't get what he's getting at here. So is he getting at that games that are balanced feel unfun? That's weird. Because everyone's trying, the ultimate goal here is to have different guns that are fun to use, but also really good balance so you're not blaming other weapons when you die. So maybe he's saying that you don't have an excuse for when you die because you can't say, oh, that gun is OP. But I really actually don't understand what he's trying to say here. I think having balance in the game is very important.
it was so bad, but it was so much fun too.
I don't know how One Man Army made it into the game. That was insane.
Yeah, and even, I'll be honest, like they definitely crossed the line in a few places where it would have still been more fun to just have that gone.
For sure.
But like maybe it was like just that they erred on the side of things being fun in their mind. Like they're like, this will just be fun that people.
I feel like this just looks so much more casual than Fortnite. It probably isn't, but it just looks like so much simpler than Fortnite is.
People can do this even though it's broken. Whereas now they're like, hey, like if it's not balanced and we can't make an esport out of it, how are we gonna, compete with? They're trying to like monetize that. There's a lot of money in esports, right? Esports has blown up, just like the entire gaming industry has blown up.
Reason 2. The world around you's changed. As a kid, I'm sure 90% of you out there didn't exactly have a lot to worry about. Even into your teenage years, you had maybe high school, sports, and maybe a job if you're a hard worker to take up your time, but you'd usually have enough time to hop on with your friends and relax. But as an adult now, you have a bunch of shit to worry about. Paying rent, all of your other bills, friendships, keeping up with your family, your significant other. There's a bunch of stuff to take up your time. And honestly, it can
See, this is the point that I was getting to at the start of the video, is the older gaming audience does not have as much time. And so if you don't have as much time, you're not going to play the game as much. And when you're getting forced to play the game by all these daily objectives, I'm not going to call them daily quests because that's what they're called in WoW, right? Then you're not going to want to play the game.
be a bit overwhelming. A lot of the people I grew up with now are getting married, getting a mortgage, and
It's a lot overwhelming.
even having kids. My point is that everything that you didn't have to worry about as a kid is finally becoming something that you do have to worry about, and it's somewhat easy to feel weighed down by it. Personally speaking, trying to relax has now become more of a task than it is to actually work on something, and the escape from reality that gaming is just can't distract me enough to stop me from just wanting to get back to what I need to do. The world around you has changed, you've gotten
And that is true. Whenever I'm playing WoW, whenever I'm playing Throne and Liberty, because I did try out that new MMO, it was pretty bad. Whenever I'm playing games, I always feel like, oh, I'm wasting time. I could be exercising. I could be going on a run. I could be doing homework. I could be doing school. I could be filming, and I haven't filmed in 2 months. So those are all reasons why people are stepping away from gaming.
older, and taking a break doesn't always seem like the best move anymore. This subject is unfortunately one that I couldn't even try to prove if I wanted to. It remains a personal diagnosis from person to person, and I personally feel that the increased stress of being an adult has without a doubt impacted my ability to enjoy a game. Reason 3. The games themselves have changed. A common argument
Okay, this is very true. Look at games from 20 years ago. Look at games from 15 years ago. You'll see skeletons. You'll see dead people. You'll see really just a lot of gore, a lot of death, a lot of violence. And now, I mean, I guess you've Space Marine 2, which is just looks absolutely awesome. But generally, all the masculinity is getting taken out of games. And I don't think people like that very much.
in the gaming community is if the quality of video games themselves have changed as a whole, and there's definitely an argument to be made for both sides. When it comes to a technical aspect, there is no argument that can be made against gaming being better than ever. I mean, just look at the most recent games coming out. The level of detail is on an entire
Yeah, he's right. It does look good. Sort of. But sometimes you A, don't want to play a realistic game, or B, it just isn't about the graphics. Even if you want to play a realistic game, it is not about the graphics. Graphics do not matter. They're just completely pointless. They're kind of a thing off to the side. Asmongold said, the graphics get you to purchase a game, which is what the devs want. But graphics don't get you to play a game. Two completely different things.
entirely different level. So I think this argument is more so held on a level of gameplay, and that's where things get a little bit dicey, and to be honest, it comes down to personal preferences, and I don't really think the gameplay has changed too much in the last 10 years. The only huge change to the industry in the past maybe 5 or 10 years was Fortnite, and generally the switch to free-to-play models of video games, which
Yeah, I think the switch to free-to-play models of video games is trash. Because then it encourages pay to win. So people download the game, they realize it's loaded with pay to win, and then they log out.
I really don't think are going to last too much longer. Outside of that, Call of Duty has somehow gotten worse, but they still get the same numbers they used to, Minecraft is still alive, and story-based games still make a huge impact, so to be honest, since roughly 2010, I don't think games have changed all that
I agree. It's been roughly the same. There's been I guess you have Elden Ring, and you have all these single-player games that are becoming more popular. However, I mean, every MMO that's come out has spiked like this and then just died pretty much instantly. I mean, look at New World. Throne and Liberty is having the same fate, you could say. So, yeah.
much from a gameplay perspective. However, looking from a broader scope, there's definitely a more substantial deviation in game design from the PS3 and onwards. Previously to the popularization of Unreal Engine and Unity, many games had incredibly unique art styles and direction. This was a result of game
Yeah, and now when people use Unreal Engine, they use pretty much a pretty standard template. So every game has pretty much the same art style because they're all using that one engine. Because why would you use anything different than Unreal Engine 5? There's no point for you to. Unreal Engine 5 is one of the best options that you can have. I guess you could say Unreal Engine 4 is good too. Unreal Engine 4 is fine. But Unreal Engine 5 is amazing. And so lots of people are going to want to take advantage of that, because why spend the time to develop your own game engine? Why would someone want to do that when you have Unreal Engine 5 right at your disposal? It just makes more sense to use.
Games having to make custom engines as a result of not having a universal option, and so from a visual perspective, so many of the PS2 era games had just such incredibly distinct graphics, physics, and animation, whereas now we live in an era where asset flips can exist, and nearly 30% of games are made with Unity, and 50% of mobile games are made with Unity. Another point
Unity? I've heard of it, yeah. Now that I see his logo. Logo. It looks way similar to Unreal Engine. Like, it looks really similar. It just looks slightly worse in terms of graphical fidelity. Yeah.
point I want to touch on is that honestly gaming seems to be a touch less original than it once was. This largely boils down to an overarching issue with the gaming industry, which is the corporatization of gaming in general. Now that's a pretty vague thing to throw out there, but let me elaborate a little bit. In the past, there were a few games that devs could throw out every single year, but the concept of annually released series like say Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed have become a more so recent thing, and both of which have been drastically hurt by this. Right now, more than ever, games are being rushed, and more importantly, giving deadlines that are more important than the quality of the games themselves. Of course, all of these issues had occurred.
I agree. I feel like every single game that's come out has been delayed. I don't think there's been a single game that's come out, other than like a really trash one, that hasn't been delayed. Almost every game's been delayed in the past like 3 years.
Before the modern era of gaming, but there's no denying that AAA games now more than ever have corporate involvement. Once again, I decided to ask Chase for some input.
Do you think it's fair to say that the corporatization of video games, which really started in like the PS3 era, may have had a substantial impact on gaming?
Definitely, in terms of like what I talked about earlier about like games losing their soul. It's just straight up a business, and like a business is supposed to make money. They see like what worked, and then they try to copy it, and it's like whatever it is that makes the most money. But they're not like thinking, man, I love this game.
I agree with that. So the thing is, you make a trash game, but it doesn't matter because it looks good. People spend $60. They buy your game. Millions of people flood into the servers, crash the servers, everyone leaves the game. Now the game devs are left with $20 million and a dead game. Do they really care about the dead game? No, they don't care about the dead game, right? They care that they just made $20 million so they can spend $1 million on another trash game and then rinse and repeat. Right? And I guess eventually they're going to get a bad reputation, but nobody cares about a bad reputation. NCSoft has a terrible reputation. I think it's NCSoft. They have a terrible reputation, right? And so people still play their games, even though NCSoft sucks. And I mean, Throne and Liberty, for example. I mean, it still peaked, right?
This is like
Right.
a game that we're all passionate about. What is something like the best version of itself that it could be? Like because you love the art, like you have like a
Right.
vision for the game. It's more like, hey, what should we do here? Well, Fortnite did this, and look how much money they made. Oh yeah, let's do that. That's a lot of companies will rush.
I agree.
The games will get rushed. It's like the developers don't want to have to rush it. That's I guess
True.
that's another thing, bro. Like when I was a kid, games didn't have updates. And that's a huge difference in terms of like the quality of games that we're getting. At least with like, I feel like when a game comes out now, it's like wait a year. So to your original question, yeah, the corporatization of gaming, definitely, that's like a big downside.
A very interesting point Chase brings up here is the addition of updates to the video game world, which previously to this, video game studios had to fully prepare a game to be as bug-free as possible since there weren't any do-overs whatsoever. And while I certainly won't argue with you that the ability to add content to a game several years after it's released
Throne and Liberty came out 2 weeks ago. It's already had 2 updates, 2 patches. Because devs don't care about bugs.
is amazing, and the ability to add, say, like an emergency balance patch has just only made games better. It's also opened the door to laziness. shitty game releases have always happened, but more so now than ever. If it was impossible to update Cyberpunk 2077 after it released, do we really think it would have been released in the state that it was? Probably not.
I
The mere
agree.
fact that I can buy a game that has put out gameplay trailers and just get a game that doesn't even slightly resemble it and is a buggy, poorly made mess is just baffling when you're talking about studios like CDPR, or even Bethesda, or literally every goddamn Battlefield game in existence. It's honestly gotten to a point where most people
That just looks terrible. It does not look fun. Any game that has lots of bugs in it does not make it remotely immersive.
are reasonably refusing to pre-order games, and for pretty good reason. So from some people's perspectives, not only are the games less visually distinct, but you're also running the risk of buying a $60 unplayable nightmare. But it's time to finally ask an important question. Why is it so bad if games change? That's the natural evolution of things, of course. It's going to evolve, and it will continue to do so. Of course, there are a few downsides we just went over, but there are also a ton of positives too. The era of DLC has allowed games to stay relevant for a far longer period of time, and some DLC content ranks amongst the best stuff ever made. Games shouldn't always feel the same. To someone who grew up with an Atari, PS2 games might not have been the same to them. There are a ton of people who just stopped playing games once there were more than 2 buttons on a controller. If anything, the gaming industry needs an
Yeah, I mean, when games were simpler, there's a point, it's a good balance, right? There's a good balance between having too many buttons and too little buttons. 2 buttons is obviously too little buttons, but having to mash 30 different buttons on your keyboard or mouse, if you don't have enough buttons on your keyboard, is way too many.
innovation now more than ever, and I think this question more so implies that you feel gaming is now specifically different from when you were a kid. Overall, I think it's fair to say that gaming has changed and in many ways improved, but in others declined. But the concept of age seems to be the common thread through all of this. Every single gamer I talk to usually talks about gaming as a past tense, especially in reference to their teenage or childhood years, the same way that someone might talk about movies being better when they were a kid, and the same thing with music. My point is that everything changes.
I say when people talk about like gaming in the past, I think now he's kind of letting the nostalgia take over. Cause like he had a point at the start, but now he's just talking about nostalgia.
And to argue what's better is a useless, arbitrary thing to do. But this directly leads into my biggest point. Reason 4, you've changed. You, as a
Okay.
person, don't miss the way games were when you were a kid. The quality of the games may have changed slightly or even drastically in your opinion, but I'm betting a substantial amount of money that you miss how you felt playing those games as a kid. With nothing to worry about, no money issues, no relationship problems, just simpler, easier times. And of course, gaming can't just bring that back. You've changed more than gaming did. A lot of people acknowledge the existence of nostalgia, but very few people understand exactly why we experience it. Nostalgia
You know, I feel like some people had better times with gaming, but I feel like not all people. Or better times in their childhood, I should say. Because some people liked school and some people liked having free time, but some people didn't have a lot of free time. So I think it really depends on the person, you know. But in general, I can see what he's saying, right? Is that we're looking back on the past video games, not because they were good, but because we miss our old lives. I think that's what he is trying to say.
is quite literally a mental defense mechanism against loneliness, and it works fucking wonders. Nostalgia is most commonly experienced in winter months, and it's been proven to increase the human body temperature by a substantial amount. It mostly
That is really interesting. You know, I actually have felt that way of a lot of nostalgia during winter months. That is true. And I feel nostalgia of winter right now and like skiing and everything. So like that actually makes a lot more sense now. I mean, I guess you learn something new every day, but that's really cool.
comes up in times where people were depressed and can often lessen these effects. Nostalgia often
True.
brings your brain comfort since it exclusively decides to pull the good memories, but can also be interpreted as the most bittersweet of human emotions. The downside of choosing to view the past in a positive light is that the present will naturally feel lesser. You are nostalgic, let's not get it twisted, just accept it. But I don't want to leave you all empty-handed here.
I think everyone's nostalgic of something though. So I think it's just what he's saying is that it's twisting our view on old video games and they weren't actually quite as good. It just seems like they were good, but they weren't actually like that good, you know. I don't know because I never really played them. I guess I played some old PS3 games. They were pretty fun, but I don't think I can really state an opinion on this topic.
So I think taking all of these reasons, I can form a bigger picture and maybe put together a way to enjoy games a little bit more. But first, let's answer the question, why doesn't gaming feel the same anymore? The world around you has changed and it's become miles harder to enjoy things the same way that you
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's completely right. It has.
could. And as a result, you may have started to play games for the wrong reasons, exclusively playing them with competitive goals or for an endgame, without the resources to successfully do so. On top of that, the medium itself has shifted from what you feel nostalgic for, and most importantly, you have changed as a person. That, people, is why gaming doesn't feel the same, because gaming isn't the same and you aren't the same. Now let's talk about some ways to start enjoying games a little bit more. My first suggestion is reevaluate what you're planning to do with your time. If you only
Let's see what he has to say. I'll keep going. I'll see what he has to say.
have time to play games on the weekends or after a long day of work, maybe consider taking competitive games less seriously or moving to a more casually oriented game.
I think even if you do have lots of time to play games, that you should try playing games really casually, because there's no reason why you should take a game seriously. But he is right. If you can't play very much, like when I was trying to take Fortnite competitively, I could only play like an hour a day, which is still a lot, right? And you know, I was never able to get as good as I wanted to get, and I always wondered why. And then I had this sudden realization one day that I will never become that good, because you just don't have the time to. Yeah.
Secondly, games that require you to sink a bunch of time regularly, like maybe Rust, might not be such a good idea as much as you might like those games. Thirdly, maybe consider picking up some games that don't require you to be so well practiced to do well. A lot of strategy games or even chess have a lot of residual skill that stays with you for a good portion of your life, regardless of whether or not you had to take a break. The next things are hard to do, but I suggest you do your best to improve.
See, this looks like trash. This looks like absolute trash. I don't know why someone could enjoy something like this. It could be really good, but to me, this looks trash.
Your surroundings before you decide to play a game. Gaming is an escape from reality for some people, but if there's something you need to do, gaming's only going to make you feel guilty. Take care of everything you need to do, then put yourself in the right mindset to play. Then I'd pick a game that sounds fun. If you don't enjoy new games these days, don't be afraid to be a nostalgia fiend and just play through all of your childhood shit. Recently, the old school COD games got their servers back, and playing some of these games is always good fun.
I think that's really cool that they brought old school COD servers back. That's really cool. I really like seeing like older versions of games come back, because I don't think there's any reason why a game should get like shut down, you know? It just seems kind of stupid. I mean, obviously there's can be a good reason for it to stop getting live service if it isn't making money, but I think they should still just have like 1 or 2 servers. Maybe you could call it private servers, but like private servers are illegal. So really, I mean, I think they should at least keep like 1 server running. But I can understand from like a financial standpoint why a company wouldn't want to do that.
Or go even further back and play some of the single player shit you grew up with. And finally, there's no point in changing yourself for a hobby, but just accept that you're not the same person, and maybe it's time to shift your gaming taste or maybe find a different hobby. Or more importantly, maybe just take a break from gaming and come back later. I hope this video to some extent has been enlightening, or at the very least maybe a bit thought-provoking.
Yeah, I think the whole taking a break from video games, that was a pretty good point. I think lots of people just need to take a break and just work out and do things better for themselves. And then when they do that, come back to gaming, fresh, clean slate, and try and play, but not excessively. Play in a way that makes it so you want to play, but you don't feel forced to play, and other things that your life aren't getting sacrificed because you're playing. Because if things are getting sacrificed in your life, like your fitness or work, or for me, I guess it'd be school and grades, right? Then you shouldn't be doing it, obviously.
As I said earlier, if it's not too much to ask, just comment your age and when you think gaming started to change, if you feel that way. Like I said, after a week I'll try to compile most of the common reasons and ages and pin a comment that's sort of a compendium of all of it. But with everything said, I appreciate you all for watching this far, and as per usual, any and all support would help me out, but no one can force you to do so, and I will see you all in the next one.
Great, guys. This was a great video. Be sure to give this video a like. I'll definitely give it a like. Alright. That video was a great video, I think. I think he did have a lot of good points about gaming and how old games, how they felt better than newer games, and some of it's just nostalgia. I think lots of those were some really good points. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. That was a fun video. That was a good video. Make sure to go over and give it a like, as I said. And I'll see you guys in the next one.